but all good.
And his staff, who actually do much of the number crunching for putting the budget document together. This budget was prepared consistent or in accordance with Article 3, Section 19, subsection 2 of our charter. And a copy of the document is included on our website for public viewing. The budget was constructed based upon the priorities that you established more than 6 years ago at this point, including economic development and public safety and encouraging high quality growth. One that I always like to remind the council of as being your priority is the employees. And I think that that is just hugely important and really commendable to you for establishing that as a priority. I won't stay on this too long. This next slide simply reflects the organization structure as it exists today. And if you have questions as we go through this, please don't hesitate to stop me. This next slide provides you with just an example of what the resident property tax bill, how it is divvied up, ranging from the amount that goes to the state of Missouri, also reflecting the amount that we receive and the amount percentage of the tax bill that comes to University City. As you can see from this information, the lion's share of property taxes benefits the school district. This resident property tax bill gives you an estimated or an example of a house on the market for $215,000. And what that means for University City is about $221 or 7% of the value of the tax bill that you receive ends up with University City. I want to get to some of the major highlights. This is more broadly and includes all of the budgets. And in a second, I'll focus more on the general fund, which really all of the bulk of the services are funded from the general fund. But some of the major highlights is we anticipate that the property tax rate as compared to this fiscal year will decrease for next fiscal year. I am recommending to you a 1.5% COLA increase for all employees. It reflects the additional revenue that we'll receive from the market at Olive Development. As you know, that parcel, 50 acres, is still under development, even though we have Costco and other businesses that are operating now. There are still others that will be, we believe, opening in FY 2025. It also reflects the full year of receiving the marijuana tax, and it reflects a increase in the solid waste rate fee that was recommended back in 2019. If you recall, we were going through that process of evaluating the rates in 2019, and then COVID hit in 2020, which had a major impact on the economy and people's livelihood. So it was recommended to you not to implement those fees. I also want to state that even if you just approve the budget, the approval of the increase in solid waste rates will go through its own process. A part of that process, I can tell you now, I'll be recommending to you that you create a task force that will review and provide a second recommendation from staff on the rates that are being considered. If the solid waste rate is increased, I'm recommending that you institute a pilot program that would eliminate the yard waste sticker fee. The intention would be to eliminate it into perpetuity, but we want to ensure that there are no unintended consequences that result, i.e. dumping, result from the fee being eliminated. Also, this budget proposes the creation of payment or establishes payments for the certificates of participation. That's not listed, but included in the budget is a repayment of $1.9 million for the debt service. This next slide just gives you an overview of all funds summary for governmental funds. It doesn't include some of the special district funds with an ending fund balance of roughly $19.5 million. This next slide presents the revenue sources and the percentages that we receive from the revenue sources. So it's unquestionable that the bulk of the revenues that we receive in University City are from some sales tax in some way. And that gives you clear evidence as to why it's so important to continue to diversify our local economy here. If you compare the amount that we receive in sales tax to that we receive from property tax, it is significantly weighted towards sales tax. This next slide is just the pie diagram of those percentages. The expenditure side, again, general fund funds the bulk of the expenditures for our operations. Government, our government certainly is a service organization, so the bulk of those expenditures are people that are required in order to deliver the high quality services that our residents deserve. And next slide is just a pie diagram of those expenditures. I want to focus on the general fund highlights. We're proposing to restore the police command major position. You may recall that that position existed pre-COVID. It was eliminated, and I'm proposing to restore it back as a part of the police department's command staff. It incorporates the new planner position that you approved as a add-on to this fiscal year's budget, FY 2024. It provides funding for public safety equipment and training, provides funding for the zoning code update. I believe it's roughly $150,000 for that. And that also is being recommended not just by staff, but also by your planning commission. It provides funding to automate payroll statements. I'm sure many of you, as I am, would rather not receive a paper document and be able to go online to view my payroll information. And it establishes a reserve fund balance for general fund of 38%. You may recall for this fiscal year, it was budgeted at 37%. So that is 1% higher than what was proposed last fiscal year. This next slide gives you an overview of the revenue sources, ranging from the property taxes. Again, sales taxes are the dominant revenue source for a university city, and why focusing on economic development is so important. This next slide just provides a pie chart of that distribution. The general fund receives several transfers in, ranging from the capital fund, parks, stormwater, public safety fund, sewer lateral, parking garage, and the golf course. I can tell you that none of these funds, even though I am recommending transfers in, truly cover their costs that's been associated with the expenses that the general fund covers for those particular funds. But it is moving us closer to covering those costs. A good example of that is that today for the sanitation fund, we do not charge for fleet operations. And while that is certainly a function of sanitation, any questions on the transfers before I move on? I know that they're sometimes can be challenging to understand. Okay. Seeing none, I'll press forward. The transfer is out of general fund. Again, you established when the Marketed Olive redevelopment agreement was approved and started being executed, a transfer of $108,000 from general fund. This is the amount, this represents the amount of money we believe or estimated would come in from the pool tax into the general fund. And so that pool tax amount goes back out to the third ward as one of the funding streams to cover that $10 million that was committed to the third ward by the Marion Council. It also recommends to you funding our debt service. This is part of the funding for the certificates of participation. This will have an amendment that I will talk with you about a little later on, but that's what that $250,000 will go towards. Also, as I previously mentioned, the general fund covers all of the cost for fleet operations, and that's what that transfer represents. Fleet operations is singled out because it really operates as an enterprise fund, meaning it's just a business that has its revenue stream and expenses. And it's just easy to identify all of the revenues that are required, and then consequently, all of the expenditures that we'll have from that fund. So the total amount of transfers out from the general fund was a little over $2 million. This gives you a breakdown by department of the expenses for the general fund. And if you focus your attention on police and fire, those make up the bulk of the expenditures for general fund. That is followed by parks and recreation. And this next slide just provides you with a pie graphic of those of that distribution. So the total amount of revenue for the general fund that's being estimated is a little over $30 million. We're recommending a little over about $32.7 million in expenditure, with an ending fund balance of roughly $12.5 million. I'd like to focus a bit on the individual departments and provide some of the highlights. We'll are recommending that we continue to fund ROARS and the city calendar, as well as the governmental affairs contract. That contract is important because we're trying to get funding from the federal government to cover the cost of construction, or at least a portion of the cost of construction of the detention facility that we believe will certainly assist with reducing the amount of flooding that occurs in University City. It funds the communication advisor position as being recommended, but otherwise it maintains the current staffing levels. So no increase in the number of personnel in the city manager's department. Under finance, continues to fund the annual audit. Outside of that, it maintains the current service levels. The Trinity Court building that is proposed for FY 2025. Outside of that, the actual staff that will be housed after renovation in the Trinity building, there are no changes to the staffing levels being recommended. For the police department, recommending restoring the command major position. Funding mobile rapid development cameras, funds replacement of vehicles and equipment. Last week, I wanted to have a better feel for how quickly are we updating our police vehicles, because as you recall, when I started in 2017, that was a major issue, that we had very old police cars that were on the street. And today, the oldest vehicle is a 2017. And so where we'll continue to allocate roughly about 5 vehicles per year that they are changing out, basically. I think that the police fleet is in very good shape compared to where we started a little over 6 years ago. And again, this one also would benefit from the renovation of the police annex. And so that is one of the other major changes where as you know, recommending that the headquarters for police return to. For the fire department, it doesn't recommend any changing in the staffing. We've got some radios, replacing one of the, I believe it's the commander's vehicles, and the SCABA harness replacement. For public works, as you know, we recently released the bonding or certificates of participation for the renovation projects. Darren Gertler will be the main point of contact for the day-to-day activity for those renovation projects. Deputy City Manager Brooks Smith will be the overall point of contact in making sure that items are placed on the agenda in a timely manner when they are needed. But that is mostly being operated out of Public Works. We're proposing $300,000 for street maintenance program. If you recall from the resident satisfaction survey, they had indicated that one of the areas where we could improve is in our sidewalks. And so what's being proposed is a heavier funding amount for sidewalks at $978,000. 900,000 of it is coming out of capital, and I believe 78,000 is out of community development block grants, but a heavier focus for the next couple of years on sidewalks until we can get them at a point where they rank much higher by our residents. Factor. For the planning department, again, the funding, recommending funding for the zoning code update at 150,000, and it incorporates the new planner position. For parks, recreation, and public area maintenance, proposing funding for the Millard Park baseball field. If you recall, Jack Buck Field was flooded, and we learned through that process that we would not be able to use that field in the future for high school level baseball. So this park was selected and is recommended for improvements to enable us to once again partner with the school district for high school level baseball play, as well as other organizations in University City that could use that park. Also is proposing funding for the renovation of some of the Heman Park tennis courts, our annual tree trimming program, replacing a 2 3/4 ton two pickup replacement, and it also intends to restore the summer camp program. If you recall, we had the study session recently regarding the summer camp program. The intention is to modify that program so that children are playing and learning. Parks continued. The tree replacement program is still being recommended, and the hazardous tree removal program is being recommended. Some of the other funds, moving on from the general fund, that I would just want to provide an overview to you on. The public safety fund, we're having a smaller fund balance for this. If you recall, we ended up loaning public safety, I believe, $6 million. Those funds were all encumbered. We have about $2.5 million remaining in that of that original $6 million that was loaned. Those funds will be used to cover some of the moving cost as well as some of the equipment when the annex has been renovated. I am almost positive that Chief Hampton will find a purpose for every $2.5 million. Up under the Capital Improvement Fund, revenues we're estimating at 2.9 million, expenditures at 4.1, with an ending fund balance of roughly $1.8 million. For the Parks and Stormwater Fund, we're estimating revenues a little over $2 million, expenditures at $2.6 million, and an estimated fund balance of close to, well, $961,205. The EDRST fund, as you can see, it has a very healthy fund balance. That does not reflect the amount of money that will be allocated for next fiscal year. They go through a process that includes the EDRST board that evaluates applications as they come in, and then they make recommendations to you on those that they believe should be funded. So that number will change over the course of next fiscal year. We started including the Third Ward Revitalization Fund last year, or this fiscal year. That will also have a healthy fund balance. As you know, you have the task force that is working on developing a strategy for the implementation that can be implemented to use that total of $10 million that you have committed to the Third Ward. And I believe that that should be hitting your council agenda within the next 60 to 90 days. The sewer lateral fund is in very good shape. You made some changes to how it was operating. This occurred back in 2018, 2019. That has resulted in really helping this fund out, and now it has a very, very healthy fund balance. There were many unknowns when the budget was submitted to you, and And I will also be recommending that you add an additional fund. Currently, we have the fire sales tax integrated with the general fund. I'm told that it is better to have that as a separate, its own fund. So I'll be recommending to amend this proposed budget to include the fire tax fund. I wanted to speak briefly to some of the items that are on the horizon. We recently sold the roughly $27 million for the renovation of the police annex in the Trinity Court building. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the intention to bring forward to you initially in a study session, the solid waste rate information. Again, I'll be recommending to you that you create a task force to review that. The detention basin project is still advancing at the federal level, and I'll be recommending a increase of 1% cost of living allowance for the non-uniform retirees. If you recall, last year was the first year that the retirees non-uniform had received a cost of living adjustment in over 20 years. And so we, as inflation continues to be somewhat high, we want to continue to adjust their amount, what we can afford, and still be able to cut into what is happening with their purchasing power. That concludes my presentation, and I have a lot of people here helping me. So I believe we'll be able to respond to any questions that you have.
Okay. Council, any questions? I think that's where we are.
Oh.
Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson. Thank you, Mr. Rose, for your presentation. I just wanted to, I was looking at the park staffing, and it looks like between last fiscal year and this fiscal year, with both part-time and full-time employees, we've got the same authorized number of employees. So with the direction, I think we've heard from residents and also council trying to get back online after the flood and get our recreation program better and better so we can get those customers back, so to speak. Is that number sufficient? Does that include what maybe we had last year that was authorized but not filled? So that we can get that, hopefully then the plan would be to fill all those so that we can carry out the programming that we're expecting to have once we get physical structures in place.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, Councilmember McMahon, we believe that the staffing that's identified in this budget does adequately staff the summer programs that will be recommended to you. If you recall, during the study session, we stated that we would start out with a reduced amount until the program was operating in the manner that we want, that you as a council desired. And then if the market dictated, we would expand that program. And so we believe certainly that the amount of That we do a good job in creating a really good summer program and that we staff it appropriately.
And just to follow up, and I'm also kind of focusing just on, running, once the gym floor is in and all those repairs, that we're still, in programming that maybe adults have been wanting to, are we going to find ways? And maybe it's not staff, because we might be hiring independent contractors that will come in and teach the class. But that's the kind of thing I'm making sure that I think there's a vision for a very robust recreation program, including summer program, but also the other programs that we've had in the past, so that we can do that. And I'm just hoping that that's the direction. And we've analyzed this so that we know that we can accomplish that type of thing.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherston, Councilmember McMahon, our goal is not to get back to where we were pre-COVID. It's actually to be better than where we were pre-COVID. And so in doing that, we're going to continue to analyze things and look at what are the things that we do really well, where we think we can expand the market. Let's market Centennial Commons. I receive marketing material from other cities all the time at my home. So I think that we're just going to end up becoming much more aggressive on that end. And then you will see additional revenues coming into the park fund as a result of that stepped up effort. So don't want to go back to where we were. I want to be much better than where we were.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, Councilmember Clay, if you're listening.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello? The audio is getting periodically garbled, like everyone's underwater. I can't hear what's being said.
What? Can you hear me better now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, I'll talk more into the mic. The Mayor Pro Tem Smotherston would.
He's not hearing us.
I am now.
Okay, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. And if things cut out again, I know Councilmember McMahon is there. I may just send my questions to him and ask him to ask them on my behalf if the audio goes out again. But let me go ahead and try to start. Under the legislative budget, first of all, thank you for your presentation. Legislative budget, I saw a communication advisor. Is that in addition to or a replacement to a communication director?
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherston, Councilmember Clayton, no, that is wanting to be transparent about Robin Frankel's position that we have had for several years. There is no intention to recommend removing the communications manager position. In fact, we're in the process of trying to fill that position as we speak.
Okay. The next question is, I realized there were $0 set to be expended by the Third Ward Task Force, but I believe they will complete their work within the context of the upcoming fiscal year. And while funds won't be deployed right away, I think it is conceivable that you could see some programs established and potentially funded within the fiscal year. Is there a way to account for that circumstance?
Yes, as the fiscal, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Clay, as the fiscal year progresses, whenever the council decides to approve a strategy and implement that strategy for the Third Ward, you have the ability to amend your budget at any time. So you can add additional resources to the Third Ward Fund at any time.
And finally, can you, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, this is my final question. City Manager Rose, can you walk through how the city is going to pay back the, I believe, $1.8 million per year associated with the renovations to the police station and historic buildings?
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, Councilmember Clay, each year, the one thing about revenue, well, I say revenue, certificates of participation, is that there is no general obligation bond that has been approved. And so there is no certain funding stream other than that you've listed in the documents for certificates of participation. And that was three funding sources. One was general fund, the other was the public safety tax, and the third one was capital funding. And so each year, the mayor and council will be obligated to approve the amount of funding that's needed to service the debt. And the debt currently is about $1.8 million, and it doesn't really fluctuate much over that 25-year period. So each year you'll need to identify that $1.8 million. So that will be a combination, I think, of the economy that will just naturally improve as years progress, or you would hope that would be the case. But also the needs will change as it relates to capital needs. And so where we started off in a hole regarding our capital that was very dated, if you recall, you as a council spent a great deal of funds on bringing back the fire ambulance service. And so the capital equipment that was needed, the ambulances, the other equipment, we purchased that. So now it's just a replacement process. So each year you'll need to decide, what are the priorities, but each year you've made a long-term commitment that the renovation of the annex and the Trinity building was a priority for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before I start my list of questions? And if there be none, or Dennis, anything? Nope, okay, all right. Well, I'll go ahead and start, Mr. Rose. Is it by chance that van that we have, because we have an extremely old police van, and I'm wondering if that's the vehicle you're identifying.
I asked the Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, I asked the Police Chief Hampton about emergency vehicles because of the concern. You can't have a patrol car that is, 15 or 20 years old and breaks down. And so our first priority was updating that portion of the fleet. I don't know specifically about the van. I'll need to ask the chief about that unless Captain Morley knows.
No, that, and
And
that's
she
fine.
can tell you what the
No,
purpose of it.
if you can let us know
I will.
which vehicle that is. I'm just curious about whether it's that van that we noticed one day.
I will get
Sure.
the number for I know it's a patrol car.
Okay,
I
all
just
right.
do not know
Which one?
what the number is.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Another question I have is, how do we identify sidewalks to be repaired? Meaning, how do we, as a council, let our members know and the citizens that we represent know how to become part of this program? How is that done and how is that identified?
We have, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, we have both a street and a sidewalk review program. So I could let Darren respond to this, or he can just correct me when I go off the rails. But we typically send people out to evaluate the streets. That's how we set up the priorities. And as they are evaluating the streets, they should be evaluating the sidewalks as well. Mr. Girdler, is that correct? Okay.
Okay. Okay, so, but also, will you accept call-ins, meaning?
Okay.
Has cracks in it and it's growing weeds in between those cracks. And that's a troubling issue, especially with the fact that we're into a summer months now and we don't have a gym at Centennial Commons. So it would be great if we could add that to this this new budget. And then my last question about parks and the balance. And Darren, the director may actually have a better idea of this. Was Arts and Letters able to put in the budget additional $5,000 request? Because the Starlight Concert Series went over budget last year. And so they had to then take additional funds from the next fiscal year budget. And so they're behind about $5,000. And I'm wondering if that request was made and made part of this budget.
Mr. Girdler, do you recall? Okay, we'll follow up with you, Mayor Pro Tem, and get you an answer. We don't have that. We'll need to do a little bit of research and provide that information to you and your colleagues.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it because as the old council liaison, the new council liaison needs to be updated on that because he was the previous commissioner. So he needs to be updated on that fact. And I do appreciate it. And that's the last question that I have. If there be no other, Mr. Rose, is there anything else? I'm sorry, Mr. McMahon. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to follow up and just ask, if the, with the basketball court, I know that at one point we were probably delaying doing much on it because MSD might be digging up the park. And then I think that kind of went to the wayside. And then we also had some folks that were offering a great deal of them renovating it, and maybe we get an update if that's just gone by the wayside. But I'm not saying that we shouldn't do something,
Sure.
but I'm just saying those two issues might have come to play in that.
Mr. Rose, is there anything else? Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, no other comments. If you decide that you have other questions, even after this meeting, please don't hesitate to forward them to me, and I will respond.
Okay, so we will now adjourn this study session, and we're going to, and I'm going to read this executive. We do have a closed session, and I need a motion to go into closed session according to Missouri Revised Statute 610.021. One, legal actions, causes of action or litigation involving a public governmental bodies, and any confidential or privileged communications between a public governmental body or its representatives or attorneys. May I get that motion?
I saw motion.
By Mr. Teeman and second by Dennis. Fuller, Mr. Fuller, that's right. Okay, any discussion? No discussions. Miss Reese, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Teeman,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Fuller,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay, Motherson.
Aye. Okay, so that we will now adjourn and head to closed session. Thank you all for joining this meeting. And Mr. Rose, thank you and your staff